everybody, I'm Catalina, and today we're here to talk about what shows we should cover on the channel for fall 2024. There's a ton of great anime that looks like it's just around the corner, and I'm honestly having a bit of trouble narrowing down exactly what I want to actually cover on here versus what I want to either watch in my free time or put on hold and watch later. So I thought that the smart thing to do might be to actually make a video discussing this and see what kind of feedback you guys have for me, because it's really important if I go to make videos about a show that I'm at least trying to pick shows where people actually want to discuss them with me, because otherwise I'm putting in a lot of work to actually do this and I'm not necessarily getting an actual conversation out of it, which is my primary goal when I do stuff for this channel. So without any further ado, we're going to jump into actually discussing some of the shows that are either continuing, returning, or new. And before we do, of course, I want to make sure that I clarify that we definitely have a series of chapters for you in the video so that you can click around and find what you are looking for. So you don't necessarily have to listen to all of this because it's probably going to get pretty lengthy, but if you're looking to see whether I have any thoughts on a show that you are looking to follow, I want to make that as easy for you as possible. Anyway, with all of that preamble out of the way, let's get going. To start us off, let's start by talking about shows that are either continuing or returning in some form or another. There aren't very many that I'm actually personally concerned about. There are a bunch of shows that are coming back for second and third seasons, but as most of you know, I started my channel in April, and while I've loved anime all my life and I've watched a variety of things over the years, it is only this year that I started really paying attention to and focusing on actually following stuff in a actual seasonal format. So what I've seen can be very different than what's being offered. That out of the way, the first thing that I can tell you for certain is that we'll most definitely be continuing our coverage of Tower of God Season 2, because I super love watching it, I super love talking about it, and I have a great time chatting with you all in the comments. There's absolutely no reason to stop the fun if they're going to give us another season's worth of it going forward in the fall, so you can be sure that that is not going to change and it will be holding its Sunday spot. The next thing that we need to talk about is whether or not our community wants to actually cover Dragon Ball Daima. I'm actually quite interested in it as far as I really care about Dragon Ball as a series. It's really funny because growing up, I wasn't actually a big Dragon Ball fan. I was actually a big Sailor Moon fan. It was actually last winter that Arifureta and I actually sat down and went through all of the Dragon Ball stuff. And that was certainly a trip for me as somebody who had never seen everything in proper order before, and it really helped me connect a lot more with the characters and the overall story and everything. And then, of course, we had the tragic passing of Akira Toriyama this year, and that actually hit me a lot harder than I expected, because I mean, I'm usually somebody who's very stoic about that kind of stuff, but like, I was weeping. It was weird, man. I'm not used to that. And I really feel that it's something that I definitely do want to watch. I'm not sure whether it's going to end up being something that is or is not appropriate for our community though. So I want to see whether we have community interest and whether I should cover that on Fridays, or whether I should cover some of the other stuff that I want to cover on a Friday instead, and I should save that for to watch with Arifureta. So your feedback is definitely appreciated. The last returning thing that we need to discuss as far as things that I am likely going to be watching this season is going to be Blue Lock Season 2. I actually only finished Season 1 very recently. I had watched a few episodes of it a while ago and really liked it and knew I wanted to get back to it. And then it was when I realized that it was going to be a part of the fall season that I decided that I would sit down and watch it in full, and I absolutely loved it. You guys probably don't know this because I've never covered a sports show on the channel before, but sports anime is actually something I super enjoy, and Blue Lock is sports anime meets psychology, which is fascinating, and the characters and everything are just really great. The overall plot line is really fun, and it's definitely something that I had a great time watching, and that I can definitely see us having a great time discussing. I'd love your feedback, of course. Let me know if you're excited about it too. But that is definitely something that I'm very keen to cover on the channel. Now, to avoid any confusion, I want to talk quickly about a couple shows that you guys probably think that I would be covering, but that for a variety of reasons, which we will definitely get into here for a minute, I'm not going to or not going to be able to cover. The first of these, of course, is Re:Zero Season 3, and the reason I can't cover this for you guys is because I haven't seen the first 2 seasons. My schedule this summer has just not been it, guys. It's just not been good. So I didn't really have the time to go through it the way I would have wanted to be prepared to give you guys a good discussion on Season 3 as it happens. So that's just not going to actually be able to go through, which is a shame because I've heard really great things about the series. I'm definitely interested in watching it, but I know that I wouldn't be able to give it the kind of attention and service that I would feel that it deserves, given first off how popular and respected it is and how much I'm actually interested in it. So that's not going to be able to happen, unfortunately. The other thing you guys might have thought that I would be covering that I'm not going to be is Arifureta, and the reason for that is that I actually sat down to start watching Arifureta, I think it was like the middle of June, because I was getting impatient waiting for Failure Frame to come out, and I had heard that there were potential parallels between the 2 stories. So of course I wanted to see what I thought of that kind of story in general, and this was a tragedy to me, and it's definitely a matter of personal taste. Let me make that really clear for you, because as far as overall quality of entertainment, I thought what I was watching was quite good, and the reason I didn't end up continuing was definitely a matter of personal preference. So what happened was I got really into the story. I got really into the initial characters. I was very intrigued. I liked how everything was moving. And then the bunny girl showed up. And she killed it for me within 20 minutes. I just couldn't stand her. I'm sorry, I didn't like her. She didn't work for me. She wasn't going away. And it was like, I can't. And the thing is, fortunately for me, I was watching that on my own time without having any expectation or anything where I needed to get a video out or something. So I was able to make that decision very clearly and with very little guilt. I'm sorry, boys, but it just was not working for me. So unfortunately, that one is not going to happen. Again, for anyone who hasn't seen it, please go ahead, check it out. Make up your own mind, because there is definitely some really great stuff there. There's definitely some really interesting story there, but that bunny girl, she just did not work for me. It was just a no. So I wanted to make sure I got both of those out of the road. There are a bunch of other series coming back, but those are the main ones that either I knew I was going to be talking about or confirming, or that I thought people might have questions about, and I wanted to make sure that there was no confusion. All right, with the returners and the continuations out of the way, we can move on to talking about new anime. On Mondays, the only major thing that's really grabbed my attention is the show Yakuza Fiance, and I think that could be quite interesting because it's not really a conventional love story, and there are aspects of it where I don't think anybody's going to necessarily be winding up happy, but it definitely looks like it has a penchant for drama and for definitely having some interesting and flavorful characters. This isn't necessarily the kind of thing I would necessarily or conventionally go toward, but it does definitely look interesting. The art style isn't necessarily my favorite on a design level. It's not that it looks bad or anything, it's just not really the kind of art I would normally gravitate toward, but the overall potential for interesting storytelling and unusual situations looks very promising, which could lead to some interesting discussions for us. As with most shows, when I talk about them and I consider whether I'll watch them before a season begins, of course I need to have a watch of this and get a feel for what kind of tone and context it's going to have, but I wanted to make sure that I listed it here in case anyone was interested in it. One of the things I find really strange about the way things are scheduled this season is that things seem to be much more heavily skewed as the week progresses, and to an extent that's okay, but then it becomes a real problem for me because I like to try and keep my Fridays and Saturdays not as heavy because those are the days Arifureta has off. So it's definitely a matter of balancing what's going on during the week with actually trying to maintain my personal schedule. But I wanted to make sure that I did bring up Yakuza Fiance to see whether any of you are interested in watching it or whether any of you have any thoughts on it. There are two shows on Tuesdays that potentially have my attention, and both seem like they potentially have a chance at some comedic tone. The first of these is Let This Grieving Soul Retire, which looks like it's about a guy who potentially got isekai'd into a world. I'm not 100% on that, that's what I listened to in a video somewhere, but I'm not sure for sure, because I haven't been able to really find a video that shows English subs for this to give that kind of context. Anyway, he ends up being convinced to become a treasure hunter, but he finds out very quickly that it is not for him, and he wants out. Now, that kind of comedy where somebody is definitely a fish out of water and somebody is trying to deal with the expectations that other people put on them is something that I can definitely find amusing. So I'm not surprised that I'm looking at this and going, oh, this could potentially be my kind of thing. I also genuinely like stories that are about adventure and exploration and people working to try and achieve things and not necessarily having the easiest time, having to actually work for it and face some challenge toward it. And a pinch of comedy mixed into that is definitely not a bad thing. The other thing that I'm potentially interested in for Tuesdays is A Terrified Teacher at Ghoul School. I think I have that title correct because there wasn't actually a formal translation on my anime list. I actually went to Google and checked to see what Google was translating the title as, because I didn't want to try and guess at the pronunciation because that really wouldn't help us that much. But this looks really fun, and it kind of makes me think about a show that I really loved as a kid called Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, where Shaggy and Scooby and friends actually end up being asked to come to this school and teach, and it turns out that they're teaching like the daughter of Dracula, the daughter of Frankenstein, that kind of deal. Except in this situation, it's a young man who seems to be at a school of creatures or monsters or whatever, and I'm pretty sure that in this we're dealing with yokai, and that could definitely be fun because yokai can be incredibly mischievous creatures, and there are some really wonderful and varied adaptations of what they are within anime, and that's such a cool thing about it. So to see what they will actually do with that here could potentially be really interesting. And again, it's a more lighthearted and comedic kind of thing because some of the stuff that we've got coming up can definitely get a bit more potentially heavy. And I think it's fun to have a bit of comedy mixed in, provided of course that it has something to bounce against. I mean, I'm not somebody for completely broken down comedy where there's no other aspect to something. That's not my cup of tea. And my sense of humor can definitely be something that can be on or off. But this looks like something that could be really fun, and I wanted to at least put it forward as something that we might watch. I just want to see what people think in general, but this is something that did catch my attention. Unfortunately, we do not have a 100% confirmed release for this yet. Hopefully Crunchyroll will pick it up and clarify that so that I'm not so confused. I think this is actually the only thing we have on the list where I don't know where its English release home is going to be. So there is that to consider as well. Next up, we have our releases for Wednesday, and this is where things start to heat up, and I absolutely can't keep everything, and it's breaking my heart because Wednesday and Thursday especially are days where there are just so many shows that I actually want to talk about, and it's just physically not going to be possible. Anyway, starting Wednesday off, we have Acro Trip, which looks like it's going to be an interesting story about a middle school girl who is offered an opportunity to actually become a magical girl villain. And in this circumstance, the reason that she wants to do this is because she is actually obsessed with the magical girl in her area, but the villain who is helping the girl is absolutely and utterly incompetent, and as such, the girl's reputation and her value as a magical girl is not being able to reach its full potential. So she's like, well, maybe I can do something about that. And of course, we see this quirky situation of her somehow being offered the opportunity to actually become a magical girl villain, which will hopefully help her like admired magical girl be able to reach the potential that she is lacking. Now, I know some of you actually suggested that I go and watch Gushing Over Magical Girls, and I did make an effort at that, but that was absolutely stylistically not for me. The premise, I loved the premise, but there is a line for me on that kind of stuff, and I mean, I can't even necessarily tell you what it is. It's definitely a case-by-case basis, and I'm certainly not in any way upset about anyone who made that suggestion to me, but that was not my cup, and I really hope this works better for me. I also hope that we get a situation where it's not going to work out the way that the magical girl and evil lieutenant did, because that did not work for me. That did not work for me. That first Christmas episode happened and I was just like, I've had enough. We'll talk about that in another video, but hopefully this foray into magical girls goes a little more smoothly if we decide to cover it here. The next thing that's coming out on Wednesdays that we need to talk about is The Do-Over Damsel Conquers the Dragon Emperor, which I am so torn on this one. It looks like a very interesting premise when I look at it as a whole, but it has a tremendously massive flaw that it needs to overcome. And that is that when the story starts, our heroine is 16, but when she goes back in time to save her life, or is sent back in time, regardless, that part doesn't matter, the problem is that she ends up being 10 years old and ends up engaged to somebody who is 19. Now, I'm not the sort of person, and you guys all know this, where I'm just going to be like, well, can't watch that one. But I am the kind of person who is definitely going to want this story to give me a hell of a good reason for choosing to use that trope in that way, because that is freaking weird. And it's taking a general premise that I would normally be all over like caramel on a Sunday, and it's making me go, do I really want to cover this? And it's not because I'm afraid any of you are going to give me a hard time about it. My community's awesome. It's just, is it going to be a story we're going to want to cover? And I mean, I'm more than happy to take a chance on it, check out a few episodes, and we can make a decision. But Wednesdays are super busy, friend, and that makes it a lot harder to make that kind of investment. The last thing that we need to talk about on Wednesdays is Tying the Knot with an Origami Sister, which looks like it could be super funny and which takes place at a shrine. It has the contrast between these sisters who are shrine maidens and this doctor in training who is an atheist, and definitely makes me kind of homesick for the discussions that some of us had for the Misfit of Demon King Academy, where we talked about a lot of philosophy and a lot of different aspects of different cultures and religions and stuff, and that was really fun. So this potentially could have this kind of vibe to it, or it could be more comedic. We won't know until we start watching, obviously, but I mean, there could definitely be some fun discussion to be had just in a general sense, and I really like the art style for it and everything. So we have 3 shows that are available on Wednesdays. I can cover 2. I don't think I can cover 3. I don't want to absolutely say I can't. I could potentially alternate a show. I'm not sure what we would do, but I'd love to also know whether there's any like interest or lack of interest on anything to help us narrow it down, because I mean, I can't cover everything. That's what I have to keep telling myself, because I way overlisted myself last season, and that bit me. It was not good. So we have to, or at least I have to, narrow it down, and I appreciate any thoughts or feedback that can help me do that so I can give you guys a legit list. So those are the ones for Wednesday. Next up, we have the most insane day of the week for the stuff that I'm interested in watching, and that is Thursday. And Thursday is just loaded. There are 4 count them, 4 shows coming out on Thursdays. And there's just no physical way that I can cover 4 shows on Thursday. It's impossible. First up, of course, we have the super popular and super hyped Dandadan. Initially, I didn't think I was going to be interested in this, but as time has gone on and I've done more research on it, it really actually does look like something that could be super fun to cover and super fun to discuss. So it's definitely clawed its way up the list and into a series of shows that I would like to talk about, provided, of course, that there's interest. And yeah, it's something I think that a lot of people are going to be talking about. So I did want to make sure that I at least mentioned and considered it for my channel. And it's definitely way higher on the want to discuss list than I thought it was going to be. The next thing that we have is my personal, most anticipated of the season, which is Goodbye Dragon Life, which I am absolutely hyped for. I think this is going to be fun. It's going to have some potential fantasy and supernatural elements. I think that it has the chance to potentially be cute and cozy. It has all of the hallmarks of something that I would genuinely enjoy. It's really funny because I was talking to my brother Kazari about what he's going to watch for the season, and most of what he knew he was going to watch were all returning shows, and he had a great big list of them. And the one new show he had listed, without having talked to me at all about it, was Goodbye Dragon Life. And I'm like, oh, dude, yeah, that's right at the top of my list. So that was amusing. The next show that I am potentially interested in covering is 365 Days Until the Wedding. Now, there are actually a handful of different contemporaries that I'm looking at covering that have different interesting things about them, because we have some of them we've already talked about. We have Yakuza Fiance, we have Blue Lock, we have Tying the Knot with an Aragami Sister, and now we have 365 Days Until the Wedding, which looks like just a super cute, fluffy romance between, I believe, introverts who are both happy doing their own thing, and who find out that if they do not find somebody to get married to, and it's not like they're trying to force people to get married, it's just that married people are at the top of the list. If you are a single person in this company, they are going to potentially ship your ass off to Siberia. That's a good reason to get married. So it looks like it's going to be a really funny show, really heartfelt, potential for some super adorable romantic moments. I did not cover a contemporary last season, so the part of me that really loved A Condition Called Love is absolutely dying to cover this. But it's on a Thursday, so we might have to either move something else or move this or whatever if I end up deciding to cover it. But it's definitely way up there on the I really want to cover this list. So let me know if anyone is looking forward to that one. The last Thursday show that we have is Nina the Starry Bride. You had to know I would want to cover this. I mean, it looks absolutely gorgeous. It has all of the fantasy and romance kind of underlyings that I would want from a story, but it's with 3 other shows on a Thursday, so it's really not lining up good. You can see why I'm having so much trouble narrowing my Thursday down. Now, I mean, to be fair, I can move things around, but of all the days to be super busy, Thursday is the worst, because as we know, I like to keep my Friday and my Saturday more easygoing, just because of how my real life is. So we're gonna have to see what we can do about all of that. Fridays, the only thing for Fridays right now is if we do Dragon Ball Daima, so that's already covered and looked after. Saturdays are Blue Lock, but there is also something else, and it might end up getting scooted to Sunday. I might end up shifting lots of stuff over one to the right. We'll have to see what goes down about this, and we'll also be looking at the feedback you guys give me, and that will definitely be helping me prioritize. But the other thing coming out on Saturdays that is super exciting and interesting is a show called Blue Box, which is actually another sports anime, only this one isn't just a pure sports anime. This is a sports anime and a romance anime combined into one. where we have our young male protagonist who is I believe he's a badminton player, and he likes to try and be the first person there to do practice and everything, but there's always somebody who beats him, and it's the girl he has a crush on who is a year older than him and who is super talented and who is on the basketball team. And he wants to get good enough at badminton that he's playing at her level, meaning like they want to go to nationals. And he wants to do that so he'll feel worthy to try and pursue her and get her to date him. I just love that, because one of my big problems when I do watch contemporary stuff is often that there isn't really anything going on. It's missing an actual conflict engine or an actual like goal engine to make a story move forward. It ends up being too passive or too random, and that can make it really difficult to help me keep connected with what's happening. With these two people having the emotional potential for a romance and then each striving toward their own sport, that shouldn't be a problem, and that could make for a really interesting series. Last up, we have Sunday, and the first thing I can tell you is that, as I stated earlier, Tower of God Season 2 will without question be continuing on the channel because we are having so much fun with it, and it would be crazy not to continue it with all of us having such a good time discussing and everything else. But there are definitely a couple other shows on Sundays that have my interest and that I might need to scoot and bounce around, and we'll see what goes down. The first of those is You Are Miss Servant, which looks like it's going to be part heartfelt girl trying to find her way into actually accessing her humanity after being trained to be an assassin, and part comedy. So that could be really cute, really wholesome, really amusing. I haven't actually looked into the background of any of these. I've been trying to go off of trailers, but it definitely looks like something that could be fun to cover. The other much heavier, much more emotionally impactful thing that I potentially want to cover on the channel is, I think it's called TsumaSho. I think the translation is If My Wife Became an Elementary School Student. I actually became aware of this several months ago when I watched videos about people explaining what it actually was when social media blew up and was trying to get it banned because they thought it was about some guy finding a 6-year-old girl thinking that she was the reincarnation of his wife and basically doing Lolita. And it's like, what are you doing? But I went and looked into it, friends, and as far as I understand and can tell, it's more akin to something like the movie Jack Frost, where a man lost his wife 10 years ago and she's been reincarnated. She is this little girl and she has her memories. So she goes and finds her family and she's trying to help them move past her death because they've basically become frozen in time and they've ceased to continue to actually live. And that is so heartfelt and so amazing and so interesting. I mean, is there the potential for it to be completely screwed up and for us to absolutely nope out if it really messes up? You betcha. It's definitely the kind of story premise where it could go very, 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 very wrong very, very quickly. But I don't believe in the idea of going, this could go wrong, therefore we shouldn't read it. No, that's not how that works. Or we shouldn't watch it. No, that's not how it works. What matters is going in and investigating and finding out the truth. And the more that people tell me, you shouldn't watch this because it could be wrong, the more I actually want to investigate because I care about the truth. If I wasn't interested in the premise, I'd leave it alone because that's my deciding factor. But when there is a premise, but there is a potential problem, either with this show or with the one I was talking about earlier, it's really important to actually go in and find out what the truth is rather than putting something on blast for no reason, because that's silly. Anyway, I think that covers everything that I wanted to talk about here and that I'm interested in potentially watching. We have a ton of potential shows on offer, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully having a lot of you give me feedback on what you would like to watch and what you would like to discuss, so that I can hopefully narrow this down a bit more and make some really smart choices. Thanks very much for taking the time to go through this video, whether you watched start to finish or whether you bounced around using the chapters. I had a lot of fun making it, and I'm definitely looking forward to your feedback. Have a great day. Bye!